I'm just looking at our wedding album. I haven't looked at it for ages, but it's a reminder of the start of our married life and the special memories that surround that time when Diane and myself met and married and started our journey together as husband and wife. We've been married now for 41 years. We just celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary. And through all those years, we've been through good times and bad. It's been a journey of often learning by trial and error. Usually a lot of trial for my wife and a lot of error on my part. But through it all, we've learned how to live and love and grow together more and more. And I'm so blessed to say today our love is deeper and stronger than it has ever been before. So what is the secret of a happy marriage? Many books have been written on this subject, and in this first chapter now of the Reconnected Man, we look at some essential keys that I believe make for a happy and a strong marriage. We need to know because marriage is one of the most important relationships in life, and yet we often enter into it unprepared, thinking that romantic love alone will carry us through. But romantic love fades and many marriages don't survive. And some of you may even have experienced the pain of that in your own lives. But even where marriages stay together, many are not as happy and fulfilled as they could be or should be. In this first chapter of the book, we liken marriage to building a house. You first need a solid foundation, then you build the four walls, and then finally you put a roof over the top. Let's look at how this applies to marriage. Well, the first thing is the foundation. If you ask anybody what is the most important part of a building, they will almost say that the foundation is the most important thing. And the same is true of marriage. Jesus told us clearly what that foundation is in the parable of the two builders in Luke chapter 6. It is building your life, your home, your marriage on the foundation of the Word of God and your relationship with Jesus Christ. This doesn't mean just being religious or going to church. It means coming into relationship with Jesus and making Him the Lord of your life and the center of your marriage. Of course, as Jesus pointed out in that parable, this doesn't guarantee that your marriage will be problem-free. The storms of life will come. Even Christian couples will face problems like any other marriages. But if your foundation is based on love and devotion to Christ, you have the basis for building a strong and happy marriage because you have a third person in the relationship, the perfect counselor and comforter, the one who designed marriage in the first place and knows how to make your marriage into all that God intended it should be. If Christ is the center of your relationship, you are building on the foundation of solid rock. The deeper your commitment to Christ, the deeper and stronger your relationship can become. But we know a house is more than a foundation. You can't live on a slab of concrete. You also need to build four walls to provide security and protection. What are these four walls? The first one we looked at in that chapter is commitment. The strength of your marriage depends on your willingness to stick together and support each other no matter what comes your way, through the good times and the bad times. On your wedding day, you probably made promises to each other like I did on my wedding 41 years ago. You may have said something like this: I take you to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day on, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. This was my promise to Diane 41 years ago, to be committed to her for the rest of my life, come what may. And she promised the same to me. In marriage, pressures and hard times are sure to come. We can bring into marriage our own unmet needs and sometimes unhealed wounds. And these can soon surface if undealt with and remain unhealed. Many couples who face struggles in their marriage can view setbacks as a sign that their relationship is flawed and may look for a way out. But studies have shown that what makes marriages succeed is not the absence of conflicts, nor even how much they may feel they love each other, but how strong their commitment is. Rather than seeing difficulties as a reason to end their marriage, they use these difficulties to deepen their commitment, improve their communication, work harder on their marriage, and make their relationship stronger. God's blueprint for a happy marriage is not a 50-50 conditional commitment. I will do my part if you do yours, but it's a 100% commitment to each other no matter what hardships, storms, or battles you may face. I know for some of you, for various reasons, this first wall of commitment has not stood the stresses and strains and has crumbled and collapsed. But this first wall is the essential starting wall for a happy and successful marriage. And the other three walls depend on it. So firstly, commitment. But the second wall is the wall of communication. The other day I was in a gift shop and saw a little plaque hanging on the wall, a humorous plaque, which said, "My wife says I don't really listen to her. At least I think that's what she said." Marriage counsellors tell us that breakdown in meaningful communication is one of the main reasons for marriage failure. I was listening to a man's story just last night as he shared how his marriage fell apart after 27 years and he didn't see it coming. He was just focused on his work and doing all the things that he thought he should be doing. But after his marriage failed, during the counselling that followed, he came to see, too late, that the primary cause was a breakdown in communication. He actually said he thought he was communicating adequately with his wife, but he said it was all surface communication, but no deep heart-level sharing. He wouldn't deal with deeper issues in his relationship, and he just swept them under the carpet and hoped that they would resolve themselves. And so they drifted apart emotionally, and something died in their marriage. Marriage counsellors tell us that 40% of men in marriage breakups never saw it coming. Isn't that amazing? Probably because they were looking in the wrong direction. I can recall many times throughout the years of our marriage when I would become aware that Diane was upset about something. And usually it was late at night when I was really tired, trying to go to sleep, but realised she was upset and I needed to deal with it. All I wanted to do was to roll over and not ask her, "What's the matter?" because I knew that that would only open up deep, hard issues that I didn't want to hear. And if I did ask her, she would usually say, "It doesn't matter." And of course, that would always tell me that it did matter. And it may then be an hour or two later, probably well past midnight, talking all the issues through, that I would finally get to sleep, emotionally drained, but with a new level of sensitivity and awareness of my wife's needs that I'd been neglecting or taken for granted, and just blundering on doing my own thing without really listening to her heart. How well are you maintaining meaningful communication with your wife? Are you taking time to really listen and understand each other? This is the second most important wall for a happy and a successful marriage. The third wall is the wall of love. Now, love is without doubt the essential mortar that holds marriages together. But love must become more than just the romantic love that first drew you together. It must become the self-giving and sacrificial agape love described in the famous chapter of love, 1 Corinthians 13. This is the kind of love that lasts, a love that is kind, considerate, unselfish, giving and forgiving. It is a love that doesn't depend primarily on feelings, but on an act of the will. You choose to be kind, considerate and loving, whether you feel like it or not. We're talking here about the kind of love that God has first shown to us. So the more you open your heart to receive the Father's love, the more He can pour this same deep, enduring, self-giving, sacrificial love into your heart and into your marriage. A deep, loving relationship in marriage doesn't just happen. It comes out of investing effort and time and putting love into your relationship right through the years of your marriage. And we're going to talk more about this in our next chapter. How strong is this third wall of your marriage? And then we come to the final wall, the fourth wall, which is forgiveness. 3 walls on their own can easily catch the wind and blow over. This is why we need this fourth wall of forgiveness to hold the other 3 walls together. If ever we need to know how to forgive and be forgiven, it's inside marriage. No matter how hard we may try to be good husbands, we know all too well our flaws, failures, weaknesses and imperfections. We make mistakes. Perhaps the most difficult words for any man to say to his wife are the words, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, please forgive me." Yet being willing to humble ourselves and acknowledge our mistakes and failures is absolutely essential to keep our marriages together. Little neglects, misunderstandings, or unkind words may not seem to matter, but they do matter. Big resentments grow out of an accumulation of little hurts. Many marriages have failed because men have insisted on their rights before their relationship and have been unwilling to say sorry. We need to come to God for His forgiveness, and we need to learn how to forgive each other. How strong is this fourth wall of forgiveness in your marriage? And then finally, of course, a house needs a roof over the top. Our marriages need, above all, the covering of God's presence over everything we do. The roof is inviting Christ to be the head of your home and the Lord of your marriage. Do you pray for each other and with each other? Do you pray with and for your children? Have you invited Christ's presence and influence to come over every part of your home life, over every room? When Christ is truly Lord of your heart and Lord over your home, then His presence and blessing will be a covering over you. What makes a happy and lasting marriage? First, the foundation. Your relationship with Christ. Then the 4 walls of commitment, communication, love and forgiveness. And finally, the covering of Christ's presence over it all. No matter how strong or weak you may feel your marriage is at the moment, it is never too late to make some changes and do some repair work. It's a worthwhile investment for the man who has a happy and a fulfilled marriage is truly a blessed and happy man. Well, I've talked about Diane and my loving wife of 41 years, and so here she is. I want to introduce her to you. And she's been very much a part of the journey together, and even in the writing of this book, she has been the one who has read the scripts so that I've always passed what I talk about through her. So, I don't know, Diane, do you want to say a few words to the men now as they launch into this book together?
Yeah, it's. I was just thinking over the 41 years of our married life, and I'm really, really thankful to God, because I believe we have had, and we obviously still do have, a happy marriage. But as I was thinking about that, I couldn't help but think it could have been very different. I don't know what your experience is in your growing up years, but my parents did not have a happy marriage. So therefore, I guess the chances are that mine may not have been happy either. I did not see very much love, if any, between mum and dad. And as for communication, normally it was replaced with absolute silence. They never really communicated anything. They just wouldn't talk to each other or to us as children. And you know what, I'm a great believer in the fact that no matter what our upbringing, in God things can be totally different. And I am so thankful to God that He has helped me and helped Ian, helped us to live a life and to love each other, and all those important areas which Ian has written about and so many other people write about. Because I know without God in our lives, without trusting Him totally, I believe things could have truly been different. And I'm thankful to God for Ian, because he's very loving and very caring. And I really give glory to Him for what He has done in blessing our marriage. And we as a couple always trust and pray that we might have a godly example to many, many others, and be able to encourage others along the way. And as I mentor many, many women, I try to encourage them in this very important area of married life. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what Ian's been able to write, and I pray it will be a great blessing to all you guys and to your wives too.
We're now going to go to the men's group, where some of the men in our group are going to make some comments on aspects of this chapter that we have just looked at.
In as much as the four things were, the four walls were very, they really helped me think about the different parts of my marriage, and where I'm doing okay and where I'm not doing so okay. The first one, commitment, I was really reminded that that's one thing that Belinda and I have really focused on together. And as part of our regular conversation, particularly when we're in conflict or when we're having a hard time, some of the things that I just remembered that we say to each other was, "I'm not going anywhere." That was something that we just say to each other. Another thing that we say, and I particularly say to Belinda, is, "I know God put us together, so no matter what we go through, He will give us all we need to make it through." One of the other things that spoke to me was about love. So one of the things I really had to learn, which I don't think was modelled to me particularly well, or I don't remember it as a young fella seeing this, was sacrificial love. And that was, in my words, to give not expecting anything in return. So what I saw, and particularly in some of our relationships around us, was I'll do this if she does that, or when he does this, I'll do this. And I could see how destructive and how negative that was, and I realised that I need something else, and that's when this became a very big thing for me, that I'm going to give, and without expecting anything in return. Now, oftentimes you do get return for it, but it's not your motivation.
I've been married 22 years to the same woman, and we've had two marriages. So one before we were saved and one after. And so in our first marriage there wasn't any foundation. we just virtually had brokenness and had not much of an example. And even before we were married, we were in counselling, and the counsellor said, we don't know why you two are together. There's not much hope for you two. So we really started in a pretty shaky position. And I came to faith not long after we got married, a few years into marriage, and it really changed me profoundly. And so commitment was there all along, but without the foundation. And but probably the strongest piece in all of that was, as I understood God's love, it gave me a first time a picture of how I would share love. And it was that sacrificial love that you were talking about, Dave. So I didn't have any image of that beforehand.
Praying with my wife and that, I find that hard, to be honest. I don't know if I'm the only guy around, but that sort of communication, spiritual communication, is, I don't know, it almost feels a bit unnatural in a way. And so that's something that out of the study very much has been highlighted to me, an area to work on, is to be intentional about, communication through prayer as a couple. It's easier to do it with your kids and that, but I don't know what it is with my wife. It might be I think it's a bit of a spiritual battle, that the enemy doesn't want us to go to that next level. So that's something that I've been really challenged with through the study.
The points in that area for me that really stood out, I think I've seen in my life, in my marriage anyway, would be firstly communication. It's a real essential part of any relationship. You think about how much effort we put into it in a work environment, communication, and just see how important it is in the modern world. And then to not put as big an effort into it in your marriage just seems absurd, and it's becoming more and more apparent to me how integral that is to my marriage. When I make the effort, in the early days I didn't even know what the effort looked like. I thought having a bit of a chat was communication, but it's so much more than that. It's about being on the same wavelength and knowing what your partner needs, your wife needs, and her knowing what you need. And again, that can only come from communication, talking to one another and expressing yourself. There's a constant awareness that's needed, I felt, about that communication in that relationship. Secondly, I guess that stood out for me was forgiveness. It's again, I guess, like one of the things as a man you struggle with is pride often, and so admitting you're wrong and seeking forgiveness is a challenging thing at times. It's a thing you have to. Basically, I had to pray about it big time and ask God for a release from it. And once it starts to flow, it does come naturally. So I found that section particularly helpful in talking about that forgiveness between myself and my wife, but also me forgiving my wife. That no person's perfect. There's always going to be mistakes on both sides. So it's important that we both are on the same wavelength. And that's what a partnership is, that's I felt. And since we've got together more intentionally as we've matured as a couple, I see the fruits of this labour, that communication and that forgiveness, the two working hand in hand. And then that last sort of analogy of Christ being the roof of this house is really the perfect analogy, because without him covering all of this and all of this being done under his governance and his guidance, none of it makes any sense. I mean, why should I be forgiving, or why should we communicate? What's the purpose to it without Christ's purpose? So he holds it all together, and he gives us
that, I guess, like a roof, he gives you that the blessing or safety when you do it under him. And it's never been easy. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's always been a bed of roses, but it's been hard work at times, but certainly worth it.
One of the things which Fiona and I have learnt, and we now really hold on to it dearly, is the concept of being in each other's corner. So they talk about, in terms of a boxer, well, he's going into the ring and he's going to cop a few hits. And what he knows is someone's in his corner. The trainer's there, he's going to look after him. He's also got a cheer squad back there. And life's a bit like that. You go out there to work and the other endeavours and you take some hits. What you want is your husband, your wife or husband to be in your corner. And we become each other's cheer squad. So that's a really strong position for us. I absolutely want the best for my wife. She absolutely wants the best for me. And mostly we live out that way. A wise couple said to us, we think it takes 10 years to get into each other's corner. And what we've got to be is persistent enough to endure that time, to learn how to get into each other's corner.
Well, now we come to workshop time. And a workshop is a place where we create things, make things, mend things, fix things. And these questions that we're going to look at are very specific and trying to help you connect and discuss about some of these issues that we have looked at in this chapter. So I trust now as you go to discuss this, you'll be open and be able to encourage one another as you share through your own particular journey. And then for next week, if you go on to read chapter 2, Keeping Love Alive, look through the chapter, read the pages, and then again do the workshop questions in advance of your group meeting, and then come along next week ready to share on that topic, where we're going to look at how do we keep love growing in our marriage. Have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you.